Welcome to I Tried It. And today I'm going to be trying to make homemade ketchup. So I have some water boiling here on the stove and I have 9 tomatoes. Now this is going off of a recipe that I will link down below in the description. And so first let me say that I'm pretty sure that whoever posted this recipe is not a native English speaker because some of the verbiage was a little bit strange. And in addition, it just says 9 tomatoes. But tomatoes come in different sizes. There's a difference between a beefsteak tomato and a Roma tomato. So I just went with 9 what I would call medium-sized tomatoes. I have stemmed them and I have washed them, and I am now going to put them into boiling water. Now, the recipe says to put them in enough water. I'm guessing that means enough water to cover them and to blanch them, and then it says to boil them for 3 minutes. Now, normally blanching tomatoes is putting them in boiling water for 1 minute to 1.5 minutes, and the whole purpose is to loosen the skin up. So I'm going to put them in here, and I'm going to set my timer for 1.5 minutes, and let's see how that works. Okay, the timer's going, and now you might be asking yourself, why in the world would anyone want to make their own ketchup? And I came up with 3 reasons that at least apply to me, and maybe there's some more reasons that might apply to you. Reason number 1 is it just sounded interesting. I've never heard of anyone trying to make their own ketchup. Reason number 2 is maybe you want to add a little flair to your ketchup. Maybe you really like ketchup and Hunt's, Heinz, and Great Value just needs to be better. And maybe this homemade ketchup will be better. And the third reason is maybe you want to control the type of sugars that are in your ketchup, the preservatives, the red dye in your ketchup. So those are reasons we might want to try making this ketchup. Now, I'm going to come back to you after these are done blanching, and we will pick it up from there. Okay, so it's been a little over 1.5 minutes with the blanching of the tomatoes, and the skins are obviously starting to peel off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take them out individually. I'm going to put them all into this bath of ice water. And so we're just going to do that now and cool them off. I'll come back to you when we have these all peeled and ready to go into the blender. Okay, so the tomatoes are cooled off, and so I'm going to take the skins off. I've already taken the skin off of one of them, and it's corded. And so what I'm going to do is, you can see the skin just peels off nice and easy here. One thing I did before I blanched them is I went ahead and scored the end of them so that we would have a good place to grab the skin and pull it off. And some people don't take the middle core out. I like to take the core out. I'm not sure it adds anything to the flavor. Some people say it gives you extra protein with the core and everything in there, but I go ahead and take it out. So I'm going to go ahead and do all these tomatoes, and I'll get back to you once we're ready to start blending. Okay, so what I've done is I have gone ahead and peeled and taken out the end, the core, out of 4 of the tomatoes, and I put them in the blender. And the blender is pretty full, so I'm going to go ahead and start blending these and see if once I start blending them, it goes down and I can get all of them in there at once, or if I need to kind of blend and then strain them out separately. So let's see what happens. We'll put the lid on here, and we will start it off. We're going to have to use a spatula to push those down a little bit so they get to the plate. There we go. Now remember, we are trying to liquefy this, so it's not going to hurt anything to have more in there. So I'm going to, but this is pretty full. I think I'm probably going to add one more in here and blend it a little bit more. And then I will do the other batch, and I'll come back to you once they're all blended and ready to strain out into the pot. Okay, so I have half of the tomatoes blended up, and I'm going to go ahead and strain them into the pot. And you want a really fine mesh strainer so you can make sure you get out all the seeds and the pulp and any leftover skin you might have in there. So I bought a set of these 3 strainers just like this from Amazon. I'll put a link down in the description. I think they're going to work really well, but let's give it a try. Let's see what happens when I try to strain this out. You can see how it's coming out. My pan is still a little bit hot. This is the same pan I used to boil everything in. But the burner is off, so it'll cool down pretty quick. And then we will just strain this. Into the pan. If it starts to get stuck, I just take a spatula and I kind of run along the edge. It probably means that there's some of the debris is getting just settling down on the bottom of the strainer and blocking it from going through. And so if you just stir it, you're not trying to push anything through the mesh. You're just stirring it up to give their space for the liquid to go down in there. So we just keep stirring this up. And you can see that it's still coming down through there. Starting to get more solid down in here. We want to get as much of the liquid out of here as we can. We want as much as we can. We want to make as big as batch as this will let us. So we're going to keep stirring it. But you can see how much of the stuff is now solid and how much the blender just couldn't blend up with the seeds and the larger, more solid pieces of the tomato. And it's starting to get pretty much all the liquid out of here. Now there's probably something you could do with this mash that's here. I'm just going to throw it out because I don't know what that would be. But if you can think of something clever to make with this leftover mash, I'll call it, leave a comment down in the description. I'd love to hear what you think could be done with it. But that is pretty much most of the liquid out of here. So I'm going to dump this out. I'm going to do the next set of tomatoes, and then I'll come back to you when we're ready to add the last ingredients and cook this down. Okay, now it's time to add the rest of the ingredients and to cook it down here and get it to the right consistency. And so the recipe says that you can use brown sugar, you can use honey, or you can use maple syrup. I'm choosing to use maple syrup here. And it's a 1/4 cup of maple syrup that I'm going to put in here. And you'll notice that I have all the ingredients laid out here. And you might see this on other videos and you think, well, that's just so they can make it easier for filming. And it does make it easier for filming. But the other reason is, how many times have you made a recipe and you got to the end and you went, oh no, I forgot to add the, whatever it was, nutmeg, I don't know what you forgot to add, but that certainly happened to me on more than one occasion. In fact, my wife Sharon and I were eating dinner with some friends here a while back, and they were telling us that they went over, I think it was to his mother's house, and she had made chicken spaghetti. And they got about halfway through the meal when she realized she had forgot to put the chicken in the chicken spaghetti. And so we've all had, maybe not anything that drastic, but we'd all had those times when we forgot to put something in a recipe. And so it's just easier if you lay all the ingredients out, then you can double check them. And so I have the maple syrup here. Let's see if we can get as much of that maple syrup in there as we can. And then it called for distilled white vinegar. I didn't have any distilled white vinegar, and I didn't feel like going to the store and getting some. So what I'm going to be using is I'm just going to be using apple cider vinegar. I think that should work just fine. In fact, add maybe even a little extra flavor. And then what we have here is onion powder, garlic powder, and cayenne pepper. We're just going to put that in there with a little bit of salt was in there. We're going to stir this up. Then it says to cook it for 20 to 30 minutes or until we get to the desired consistency. And so I have this on medium-low, and I'm just going to cover it. I'm going to stir it every once in a while and come back and see what happens at about 20 to 30 minutes. And when it's ready, then I'll get back to you. Okay, so I let this cook down for about 40 minutes. I think it's just about the right consistency. And in that time, I put some French fries in the air fryer because obviously the French fry is the best platform for testing ketchup. So now we're going to test it. So let me get one of these French fries and we will see how this homemade ketchup holds up. So it goes on the fry really good, holds together. Goes on there. This fry's pretty hot, so I'm going to take a gentle bite here. Yeah, that's a really good ketchup. It definitely has a little bit of a different flavor from a store-bought ketchup. Tastes fresher. You can taste the vinegar a little bit, but it's cut by that maple syrup and has a little bit of that cayenne pepper in there, so it has some nice flavor to it. Probably the best ketchup I've ever had. Now the question is this something you should try at home? Well, it ends up being a pretty expensive batch of ketchup by the time you buy all the tomatoes. So if you're going to buy the tomatoes, you'd have to really want a really good ketchup or just really want to be able to control the preservatives and the other things in your food. But if you grow your own tomatoes, I think this is definitely try it out. See what you think. And if you do end up trying it, please let me know down in the comments. Tell me what you changed, what you did the same, whether you agree with me. But this is something that I tried, and you should too.